Picture this: you're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, late for an important meeting. The car in front of you suddenly cuts you off. Your hands grip the wheel, your jaw clenches, and before you know it, you're yelling words you'd never say to someone's face. Sound familiar? We've all been there, moments when our emotions hijack our better judgment. But here's the twist. What if I told you there's an ancient philosophy that could rewire how you respond to these everyday frustrations? Stoicism, practiced by history's greatest minds from Roman emperors to modern CEOs, holds the key to mastering self-control, and not just in traffic. This is about transforming how you handle stressful conversations, resist temptations, and make better decisions under pressure. Over the next 30 powerful tips, you'll discover how to pause before reacting, reframe setbacks as opportunities, and build the kind of unshakable composure that leads to better relationships, career success, and personal growth. Because here's the truth: self-control isn't about suppression. It's your secret superpower to navigate life's chaos with clarity and purpose, and we're about to unlock it together, one Stoic practice at a time. Let's begin. Now let's take that first powerful step toward mastering self-control with a technique so simple yet transformative. It changed how Roman emperors ruled and how modern leaders make decisions. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that between every impulse and every action, there exists a sacred space called the pause. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending frustration doesn't exist. Instead, it's about creating just enough breathing room to choose your response rather than being controlled by your reactions. Here's why this matters in your brain right now. Neuroscience shows that when we get triggered, our amygdala, the emotional alarm system, floods our body with stress chemicals that can hijack our rational thinking for up to 6 seconds. But if we can ride out that wave without reacting, the prefrontal cortex, your brain's wise decision maker, regains control. Picture this common workplace scenario. Your colleague takes credit for your idea in a team meeting. Your face flushes, your pulse races, and you're about to call them out angrily in front of everyone. But then you remember the pause principle. You take one deep breath, then another, counting silently to 6 while imagining Epictetus whispering, "You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to." In that brief window, you realize retaliating would damage your professional reputation more than their action did. Instead, you calmly say, "I'd love to discuss how we develop that concept together after the meeting." This is the magic of the 6-second rule in action. The Stoics didn't have fMRI machines, but they understood something profound about human nature that modern science now confirms. Every day presents dozens of these moments: when someone cuts in line, when your partner forgets an important date, when you're tempted to check social media instead of working. Each is an opportunity to practice what Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron calls the sacred pause. Not space to judge your emotions, but to observe them with curiosity before deciding how to act. Imagine how different your relationships and decisions would be if, just 6 seconds at a time, you stopped being jerked around by every impulse. That's the superpower Epictetus wants to give you, and it starts the moment you recognize that tiny gap between what happens to you and what happens next. Now that we've explored the power of the pause itself, let's go deeper into how we can actually make this principle work in the heat of the moment. The Stoics didn't just preach about self-control, they built systems to reinforce it. Seneca, the great Roman philosopher, was famous for his evening ritual. Before bed, he would review his entire day, asking himself where he had succeeded in pausing before reacting and where he had failed. But here's the genius part: he didn't leave it to chance. He created triggers in his environment to remind him of these lessons. His writing desk was positioned near a window where the morning light would catch his attention, signaling him to start the day with intention rather than impulse. You can do the same. Think of these triggers as tiny guardrails for your mind. One of the simplest yet most effective is a physical anchor. something your body does to snap you into awareness when emotions start rising. The ancient Stoics would often grip a coin or clench their fists as a way to interrupt automatic reactions. Modern psychology backs this up. Physical sensations can ground you in the present, breaking the cycle of reactive thinking. Try it next time you feel irritation bubbling up. Close your hand tightly for a few seconds, focusing on the sensation. That momentary shift can create just enough space for you to choose a different response. But triggers don't have to be physical. Your environment holds powerful cues if you design them intentionally. Imagine you're trying to resist mindless scrolling on your phone. Instead of leaving it next to your bed, place it across the room with a sticky note that says pause. That extra step forces a break in the autopilot response. Or take a cue from Marcus Aurelius, who kept symbolic reminders around him, like a skull on his desk, not as morbid fascination, but as a trigger to pause and reflect on what truly mattered before reacting impulsively. You can apply this to modern frustrations too. If road rage is your struggle, try placing a small object, a smooth stone, a bracelet on your dashboard. Every time you see it, let it remind you to take a breath before honking or yelling. These triggers work because they bypass the thinking brain and speak directly to habit. The Stoics understood that willpower alone isn't enough. You need structures, so here's your challenge. Pick one temptation or reactive habit you struggle with and design a trigger for it this week. It could be as simple as setting a daily reminder on your phone with a Stoic quote, or even a visual cue like changing your phone wallpaper to a meaningful image. The key is consistency. Train your brain to associate that trigger with the pause, and soon self-control won't feel like a battle, it'll become second nature. Now let's shift our focus to one of the most game-changing Stoic tools, the Dichotomy of Control. This isn't just philosophy, it's a practical mental filter Epictetus gave us to instantly diffuse stress. Picture this: your mind is like a sorting machine, and every thought or situation that comes your way falls into one of three bins. Bin 1 holds what's fully within your control, your opinions, your efforts, your actions. Bin 2 contains what's partly in your control, like the outcome of a job interview or a sports match. And Bin 3, that's for everything outside your control: the weather, traffic, other people's opinions. Here's where most of us go wrong. We waste energy obsessing over Bin 3, trying to change what we can't. Think about the last time you refreshed a social media post, anxiously watching for likes. Those likes, Bin 3, the time and creativity you put into the post, Bin 1. The Stoic move isn't to stop caring, but to redirect that energy where it actually matters. Let's make this real with a scenario. Imagine you've shared a carefully crafted post, maybe about a personal achievement or a creative project. An hour later, you notice a friend's similar post got twice as many likes. That sting you feel, that's your brain misfiring, treating Bin 3 others' reactions as if it's Bin 1 your worth. Epictetus would ask, did you control the effort you put in? Yes. Can you control how algorithms or people respond? No. So where does your energy belong? On refining your craft, not refreshing your notifications. This mental flowchart isn't about apathy, it's about precision. Take public speaking. Your preparation, Bin 1, reduces anxiety because it's your domain. The audience's reaction, Bin 3, not your job. Even Bin 2, like nailing every word, gets a Stoic tweak. You control practicing, not perfection. That's why Olympic athletes use this drill. They focus on their training, Bin 1, accept judging, Bin 3, and view performance, Bin 2, as a chance to excel, not a demand for validation. Try this today. Catch yourself stressing over something and ask, which bin does this belong in? If it's Bin 3, visualize physically setting it down. If it's Bin 1, channel your energy there. This simple act trains your brain to stop pouring fuel on fires you can't put out. Over time, you'll spot the freedom in this practice, not because life gets easier, but because your focus becomes sharper. Up next, we'll explore how the Stoics prepared for the worst, not with fear, but with a strategy that turns anxiety into advantage. Now let's turn to one of the most powerful tools in the Stoic toolkit, Premeditatio Malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This isn't about pessimism, it's about preparedness. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, began each day with this mental exercise, and here's why it's a game-changer for self-control. Imagine waking up and deliberately visualizing everything that could go wrong that day, not to dwell on fear, but to disarm it. Picture this: you've got a high-stakes job interview. Instead of just hoping for the best, you sit quietly and mentally rehearse the worst. The interviewer is running late and seems distracted. Your laptop crashes during the presentation. They ask a question you didn't prepare for. By confronting these scenarios in advance, you strip them of their power to shock you in the moment. Here's how it works neurologically. When you visualize adversity, your brain activates the same pathways as if it were actually happening. This creates a kind of emotional inoculation. So when life inevitably throws a curveball, you're not paralyzed. You've already practiced your response. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in his morning ritual. When you wake up, tell yourself, the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful. Not because he expected the worst, but because he wanted to meet reality on his own terms. Let's apply this to our job interview example. You walk in, and sure enough, the hiring manager is checking their phone while you speak. Instead of panicking, you recall your mental rehearsal. This was bin 3 outside your control. Your prepared response: stay composed, adjust your tone to re-engage them, and focus on delivering value. Unlike someone who hinged their confidence on perfect conditions, you're unfazed because you expected turbulence. The key is in the details. Don't just vaguely think something might go wrong. Be specific. What if the room is freezing and you're shivering? What if you spill coffee on your shirt? By pre-solving these hiccups, bringing a jacket, keeping a stain remover pen in your bag, you turn anxiety into strategy. The Stoics called this the reserve clause, adding fate permitting to your plans. You aim for success, but you're armored against setbacks. This practice flips the script on modern positivity culture. Instead of white-knuckling through affirmations, you confront the full spectrum of possibilities. That's why Navy SEAL use similar mental drills. They don't just train for the mission, they visualize equipment failures, injuries, and chaos. When disaster strikes, their reaction isn't, "This shouldn't be happening." It's, "Ah, this is what we prepared for. Try it tonight. Before bed, sketch out tomorrow's challenges, a tough conversation, a crowded commute." Imagine handling each with calm clarity. Notice how, over time, this doesn't make you gloomy, it makes you unshakable. Because when you've already weathered the storm in your mind, the real thing feels like just another wave. Coming up, we'll explore how zooming out to a cosmic perspective can shrink everyday irritations down to size. Now let's shift our gaze upward, literally, to one of the most humbling Stoic practices, the view from above. Picture this: you're stuck in traffic, horns blaring, your grip tightening on the steering wheel as the car in front of you cuts you off. Now, imagine pulling your perspective back like a camera, zooming out, first to the city skyline, then further until you see the entire planet from space, that iconic blue marble floating in darkness. Suddenly, your frustration feels microscopic. This is the Stoic cosmic perspective in action. Marcus Aurelius used it daily, reminding himself, "You are a little soul carrying around a corpse," a blunt way to say, in the grand scheme, our problems are fleeting. Modern science gives us a powerful tool to practice this. NASA Earthrise photo. When astronauts first saw our planet from the moon, many reported an overwhelming sense of unity and insignificance of human squabbles. That's the same shift Stoics aimed for. Here's how to apply it next time road rage bubbles up, your amygdala fires, screaming, "This jerk ruined my day." Pause, envision the interstate from a satellite view. Those cars are just ants crawling along a thread. Zoom further, your city becomes a speck, then your country, until Earth is a pale dot like Carl Sagan described. That driver who cut you off, they're grappling with their own struggles, invisible to you. Your delayed commute, barely a blip in geological time. This isn't about dismissing your feelings but contextualizing them. Research from cognitive psychology shows that spatial distancing, imagining yourself far from a problem, reduces emotional intensity. It's why therapists suggest writing letters to your future self. The Stoics just took it interstellar. Make it practical. Download a live Earth wallpaper for your phone. When a colleague's petty comment stings, glance at that image. Or try this nightly ritual. Lie down, close your eyes, and mentally fly up from your bedroom through the atmosphere, watching continents shrink until you're floating beside the International Space Station. Breathe. Notice how your argument over dishes or a work deadline seems laughably small from here. The magic lies in the contrast. By regularly touching the vastness, you train your brain to default to, is this worth my energy? That's how Stoics turned philosophers into unshakable leaders, not by ignoring life's friction, but by seeing it against the backdrop of infinity. Next, we'll explore how voluntarily stepping into discomfort, like Seneca's icy plunges, can fortify your self-control muscles in surprising ways. Now let's turn our attention to an idea that might sound counterintuitive at first, deliberately seeking discomfort. Picture Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, deliberately taking cold showers, sleeping on hard floors, and wearing thin clothes in winter. Why would someone with every luxury at their fingertips choose to do this? Because Seneca understood a fundamental truth about human nature. Comfort softens us, while controlled hardship strengthens our resolve. Here's how it works. When we routinely expose ourselves to small, manageable doses of discomfort, like cold water or hunger, we build what psychologists call stress inoculation. Just as vaccines introduce a weakened virus to prepare your immune system, voluntary discomfort trains your mind to handle life's inevitable challenges with calm instead of panic. Modern research backs this up. A study from the University of Manchester found that people who took cold showers daily reported increased resilience to stress and even fewer sick days. So how can you start? Let's break it down into a practical 21-day challenge. Day 1 begins with something simple, splashing your face with cold water for 10 seconds after washing it. It's brief, but that shock of cold forces you to pause and control your impulse to recoil. By day 7, you'll graduate to a 30-second cold rinse at the end of your shower. Notice how your breathing steadies as you override the instinct to escape the discomfort. Around day 14, introduce a secondary challenge, skipping the snooze button immediately when your alarm rings. This isn't about depriving yourself of sleep, but about resisting the temporary comfort of curling back under the covers. Pair this with delaying gratification in small ways, like waiting an extra 15 minutes before your morning coffee. These micro acts of discipline rewire your brain's relationship with instant gratification. By day 21, you'll be ready for the full Stoic immersion, a 2-minute cold shower. This isn't meant to be torture, but a controlled exercise in mastery. As the water hits you, focus on your breath instead of the discomfort. Seneca wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare." Modernize this by trying a 12-hour fast once a week, not for weight loss but to practice enduring hunger with composure. The key is progression. Just as you wouldn't lift heavy weights without training, don't jump into extreme discomfort prematurely. Seneca didn't start by winter camping, he built up to it. Track your progress in a journal, noting not just the physical sensations but the mental victories. Did you complain less when your commute was delayed? Did you handle a work setback with more patience? That's the real measure of growth. This practice isn't about punishing yourself, but about reclaiming agency. Every time you choose discomfort over convenience, you prove to yourself that external conditions don't dictate your inner state. That's the Stoic superpower, transforming hardship into training. Next, we'll go deeper into how to design your own modern discomfort labs, creating everyday scenarios that systematically strengthen your willpower without upending your routine. Now let's take Seneca's idea further by designing what I call modern discomfort labs, deliberate experiments that stretch your self-control muscles in everyday life. Think of these as mini training grounds where you simulate challenges to build resilience without waiting for life to throw them at you. The beauty of this approach is that you control the intensity, duration, and frequency, turning ordinary moments into opportunities for growth. Start with something as simple as a tech-free Sunday. Pick one day a week to disconnect from all non-essential screens, no social media scrolling, no binge watching, no mindless phone checks. Notice how often your hand reaches for your device out of habit, not necessity. That urge to fill empty moments with digital noise reveals how deeply instant gratification is wired into us. By resisting it, you're not just reclaiming time, you're rewiring your brain's tolerance for stillness. Pair this with analog activities that demand patience, like reading a physical book or writing longhand. The goal isn't to reject technology, but to prove to yourself that you can thrive without constant stimulation. Next, create discomfort through conversation. Once a week, initiate a discussion you've been avoiding, whether it's giving constructive feedback to a coworker, apologizing to someone you've wronged, or asking for help when you'd rather appear self-sufficient. These talks are uncomfortable because they threaten our ego, but that's exactly why they matter. Ancient Stoics called this the discipline of assent, training yourself to act according to principle rather than pride. Keep a journal afterward, noting how the conversation went and how you felt before, during, and after. Over time, you'll find that the anticipation of discomfort is often worse than the experience itself. Another powerful lab involves altering daily routines to disrupt autopilot. Take a different route to work, swap your usual coffee order for something unfamiliar, or rearrange your workspace. These small changes force you to stay present rather than coasting through habits. The military uses similar techniques. Navy SEAL will suddenly change meal times or sleep schedules during training to build adaptability. Your version might be as simple as eating your lunch in silence instead of watching videos, tuning into the flavors and textures you normally ignore. For a next-level challenge, try the reverse comfort exercise. Identify what you typically do to relax after a stressful day. Maybe it's snacking, scrolling, or zoning out to TV, and replace it with an activity that requires active engagement, like solving a puzzle, practicing a skill, or having a focused conversation. This breaks the cycle of using comfort as an escape and trains you to recharge through intentional action instead of numbing out. The key to successful discomfort labs is reflection. After each experiment, ask yourself 3 questions. What did this reveal about my automatic reactions? Where did I succeed or struggle in maintaining control? And how can I apply this insight to bigger challenges? Over time, these intentional discomforts compound like interest, giving you the resilience to handle unexpected hardships with the same calm you practiced in your self-designed labs. Up next, we'll explore how Marcus Aurelius used journaling not just to record his days, but to wage daily battles against his own impulses, a practice that turns self-awareness into self-mastery. Now let's turn the page to one of the most personal tools in the Stoic toolkit, Marcus Aurelius' method of journaling battles. This isn't about recording your day like a diary. It's a strategic debrief of your inner conflicts, a way to dissect your struggles and victories with the precision of a philosopher general. Imagine sitting across from your wiser self each evening, reviewing the day's skirmishes against impulsivity. That's the power of this practice. Start by dividing your journal into 3 columns. In the first, describe the moment your self-control was tested, not just what happened, but the exact thoughts and emotions that surged. Maybe it was snapping at a colleague when they interrupted you, or caving to a late-night snack craving. Capture the raw details. The second column is for your response. Did you react on autopilot, or did you apply Stoic principles? Be brutally honest. The third column is where the growth happens. Here, rewrite the scene as your best self would have handled it. If you lost your temper, how might you have paused to consider the other person's perspective? If you gave in to temptation, what alternative action aligned with your long-term goals? Marcus didn't just journal about major events. He analyzed micro moments, the sigh of irritation in traffic, the fleeting envy of a neighbor's success. Try this prompt. Today, when tempted me, I noticed my body signaled clenched jaw, quickened pulse. My initial thought was, but upon reflection, a wiser response would have been. This trains you to spot early warning signs before impulses escalate. Another powerful prompt comes from Epictetus. What did I today that was truly my own work? This isn't about productivity. It's about identifying actions where you exercise deliberate choice versus those hijacked by external pressures or fleeting desires. Maybe you chose to listen deeply in a conversation instead of waiting to speak. That's a victory worth documenting. For failures, adopt Marcus' compassionate curiosity. Instead of "I failed," ask, what hidden belief drove that reaction? Maybe your social media binge revealed a fear of missing out, or your procrastination stemmed from perfectionism. Journaling strips shame from these insights, turning stumbles into data points for growth. Here's a modern twist. Pair your entries with Stoic quotes. After recounting a struggle, add a line from Marcus or Seneca that speaks to it. Over time, you'll build a personalized playbook of philosophical responses to your recurring challenges. End each session with this prompt. What one small act of self-control will I prioritize tomorrow? Keep it specific, resisting the urge to check emails during breakfast or pausing 10 seconds before responding to criticism. These deliberate intentions prime your mind for success. The magic of this practice: over weeks, patterns emerge. You'll spot the situations where your resolve crumbles and the strategies that fortify it. That's when journaling transforms from record-keeping to reprogramming, your own mental dojo where every entry sharpens your discipline. Coming up, we'll explore how Stoics turn obstacles into fuel, a mindset shift that transformed prisoners of war into masters of resilience. Now let's shift our perspective entirely, because what if every obstacle you face isn't a roadblock but the actual path forward? This is Stoicism's radical reframe: the obstacle is the way. And no one embodied this better than James Stockdale, the Navy pilot who survived 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Beaten, isolated, and subjected to torture, Stockdale later credited his survival to one Stoic practice: seeing every horrific challenge as material for building unshakable resilience. Here's how it worked. When his captors locked him in leg irons, Stockdale didn't despair. He thought, "This is my gym. These restraints are forcing me to isometrically strengthen my legs." When they cut off communication between prisoners, he turned solitary confinement into a meditation chamber, mentally rehearsing Shakespeare and Stoic philosophy. His lowest moment became his most transformative. As he put it, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality." That's the essence of the obstacle is the way. But how does this apply when your obstacles aren't prison camps but modern struggles like a failed startup? Let's break it down with a case study. Imagine launching a tech product after 2 years of work, only to see it flop in the market, the conventional response. Devastation, self-doubt, maybe even giving up. The Stoic response: first, separate the facts from judgments. Fact: the product didn't gain traction. Judgment: I'm a failure. Then interrogate the obstacle. What tangible skills did building this startup teach you? Coding, marketing, resilience. Those are permanent gains. What flaws did the failure reveal in your approach? Those are now your most valuable roadmap. This is where Stoics flip the script. That competitor who outpaced you, they've just given you a free masterclass in what works. Those negative customer reviews, they're a precise blueprint for improvement. Even the financial strain forces creativity. Many legendary companies like Airbnb emerged from founders' obligatory struggles during recessions. Try this reframing exercise next time you hit a setback. Write down the obstacle, then complete these 3 sentences. This is training me too. The hidden advantage here is, and if this hadn't happened, I'd never have discovered. That last one's powerful. Stockdale realized his imprisonment made him a better leader. Your failed project might reveal your true passion or teach you to pivot faster. Here's the key. Obstacles aren't just things to endure, but to exploit. When a client rejects your proposal, that's not a rejection. It's a live test of your adaptability. When your team resists change, that's not defiance. It's feedback highlighting where your communication needs work. Even procrastination, that universal obstacle, is a signal. It's not laziness, it's your mind revealing tasks that feel misaligned with your strengths or values. Stockdale's final lesson: the obstacle never disappears. The goal isn't to reach some obstacle-free life, but to develop obstacle vision, the ability to spot the hidden leverage in every difficulty, because the very thing blocking your path. That's the path. Next, we'll examine how Stoics detach from others' opinions, a skill more crucial than ever in our social media age. Now let's turn our attention to something that shapes so much of modern life yet would baffle the ancient Stoics: the endless pursuit of likes and followers. While today's world obsesses over reputation, how we're perceived online, Stoicism teaches a radical alternative. True self-control, they argued, comes from refining your character, not curating your image. Consider the case of a social media influencer who built a following of millions by crafting the perfect persona. Morning routines filmed at golden hour, sponsored posts with luxury brands, curated snapshots of a seemingly flawless life. But behind the scenes, anxiety over every dip in engagement, sleepless nights editing captions to sound more relatable, and a growing disconnect between the persona and the person. The more likes they chased, the more their authentic self-control eroded, posting not out of purpose but fear of irrelevance. This is where Stoicism draws a hard line. Reputation, as Epictetus bluntly put it, is not within your control. You can't force people to admire you. Algorithms shift, trends fade, and today's viral star is tomorrow's forgotten scroll. But character, that's your sovereign domain. Marcus Aurelius spent mornings writing reminders not about how others saw him, but how he could practice patience, courage, and integrity before breakfast. The Stoic exercise here is stark. Audit your actions by asking, am I doing this because it's right or because it'll look good? Take fitness. Posting workout videos to motivate others aligns with virtue. Doing it solely for validation turns exercise into performance. Even kindness warps when done for show. Seneca warned of theatergoer philanthropy, where people donate just to be seen holding the check. Social media amplifies this trap. A study found that heavy users start evaluating experiences not by how they feel, but how post-worthy they'll appear. That family dinner ruined by insisting on retaking photos until the lighting's perfect. The concert watched through a phone screen framing the ideal reaction shot. Every moment becomes content to be judged, not lived. But here's the Stoic reframe. When you shift focus from reputation to character, you reclaim agency. A business owner stops obsessing over Yelp reviews and focuses on serving customers ethically. A writer ignores hot takes and crafts work that aligns with their values. Like the Roman statesman Cato, who wore unconventional clothing to train himself to withstand ridicule, you build resilience against external opinions. Practical steps. First, institute a virtue check before posting. Ask, is this sharing truth or manufacturing image? Second, schedule offline hours where you act purely for intrinsic satisfaction, reading without logging the book, hiking without geotagging the trail. Third, study historical figures like Socrates, who died unpopular but uncompromised, versus emperors who craved applause but left no enduring legacy. The ultimate test: imagine losing all followers overnight. Would you still create, contribute, and pursue growth? If the answer's yes, you're operating from character. If the thought terrifies you, it's time to detox your motivations, because as the Stoics knew, reputation is gossip, character is destiny. Up next, we'll confront a practice most modern minds avoid, yet the Stoics considered essential for unshakable perspective. Now let's turn to a Stoic practice that might feel uncomfortable at first but holds transformative power: remembering your mortality. The ancient Stoics called this Memento Mori, Latin for remember you must die. Far from being morbid, this practice was their secret weapon for living with urgency, gratitude, and unshakable focus. Picture a Roman aristocrat's home 2,000 years ago. Among the lavish decor, you'd spot something startling: lifelike wax masks of deceased ancestors displayed prominently. These weren't Halloween props. They were daily reminders that life is fleeting, meant to jolt the living out of complacency. Marcus Aurelius kept a skull on his desk as a writing companion, noting in his journal, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. Contrast this with modern life, where we bury death in euphemisms and distractions. We say someone passed instead of died, avoid cemeteries, and fill our schedules to escape the quiet moments where mortality might whisper. Yet studies show that people who consciously reflect on death become more present, not less. They prioritize relationships over petty conflicts, waste less time on trivial pursuits, and take meaningful risks. The Stoics knew this instinctively. The key is how you practice Memento Mori. It's not about paralyzing fear, but clarifying perspective. Try this: each morning, pause for 10 seconds to acknowledge, "I will not live forever." Feel the weight of that truth, then ask, "If today were my last, would I spend it this way?" Notice how this dissolves procrastination, that email you've avoided, the apology you've delayed, the project you've sidelined. Death doesn't negotiate deadlines. History's greatest minds used tangible reminders. Victorian era Memento Mori jewelry featured skull motifs hidden in lockets. Japanese samurai wrote death poems to crystallize their intentions. A modern twist: set your phone wallpaper to an hourglass or a withering flower. Every unlock becomes a prompt: time is slipping. Am I using it well? The practice reaches its peak when tested. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting. Most people fume at red lights, but someone practicing Memento Mori might think, "What if this is my last traffic jam? Will I let frustration steal these final moments?" Suddenly, the delay becomes space to notice sunlight through the windshield or call a loved one. Here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered: staring death in the face doesn't diminish life, it amplifies it. Researchers confirm this. Patients given terminal diagnoses often report increased happiness, clarity, and connection in their remaining time. The Stoics aim to live with that intensity before crisis strikes. Your challenge this week: borrow a page from Seneca, who ended each day by asking, "Did I live or just exist?" Keep a log where you rate days not by productivity but by presence. Note when mortality awareness sharpened your choices. Perhaps you listened more patiently or declined a draining obligation. Over time, you'll spot patterns. Like the Romans with their ancestor masks, you'll train your mind to see beyond the trivial. Because when you remember everything ends, you start making sure now matters. Coming up, we'll explore how loving your fate, even when it twists in unexpected ways, can unlock a deeper level of resilience. Now let's take Memento Mori one step further by anchoring it into your daily life with tangible triggers. The Stoics didn't just think about death abstractly, they surrounded themselves with visceral reminders to keep the lesson sharp. Here's how you can do the same in the modern world, turning philosophy into unshakable habit. Start with your environment. Just as Marcus Aurelius kept a skull on his desk, you can design subtle mortality anchors in your space. Change your phone's lock screen to an hourglass or a wilting flower, something that catches your eye multiple times a day. Each time you unlock your phone, let it prompt a micro moment of reflection. Is this how I want to spend my limited time? If skull imagery feels too stark, try a historical artifact like an antique pocket watch or a quote overlay like Seneca's. Life is long if you know how to use it. The goal isn't shock value, but gentle nudges toward presence. Rituals deepen the practice. Consider a weekly Memento Mori walk in a cemetery, not as a grim outing, but as a quiet reset. Notice the dates on tombstones, how many lives were cut unexpectedly short, how many achievements were left unfinished. The Japanese have a tradition called kuyo, where they hold ceremonies for broken needles or worn-out tools honoring their service. Adapt this by pausing to acknowledge the deaths of small things, an expired carton of milk, a burned-out light bulb, as rehearsals for bigger letting go. For a more active ritual, try the premortem exercise borrowed from Stoic-influenced psychologists. Before starting a project or even a mundane task, ask, if I were to die tomorrow, would this matter? If the answer is no, either discard it or reframe it to align with your values. A CEO client of mine used this to stop attending pointless networking events. Instead, he invested that time coaching his daughter's soccer team, something he'd regret not doing on his deathbed. Physical objects can serve as powerful tokens. Carry a Memento Mori coin in your pocket. Some Stoicism sites sell replicas of ancient Roman coins engraved with skeletons. When stress hits, roll it between your fingers as a tactile reset. Or repurpose everyday items. A wristwatch becomes a time's fleeting reminder. A wedding ring prompts what truly lasts. The most potent anchor, language. The Stoics punctuated conversations with phrases like "this too shall pass" or "enjoy these things while you have them." Try inserting mortality-conscious phrases into your inner dialogue. When annoyed by a slow cashier, whisper, "One day I'll miss this ordinary moment." When savoring a meal, think, "This could be my last bite of chocolate, let it count." Studies on terror management theory reveal why these anchors work. They reduce death anxiety by integrating it into daily awareness rather than suppressing it. One experiment showed that people who wrote about their own death became more generous and less materialistic afterward. Like a muscle, regular exposure to mortality thoughts builds emotional resilience. Your challenge: pick one Memento Mori anchor to test this week. Maybe it's setting a daily alarm labeled "What's Undone" or placing a framed quote by your bed. Observe how it shifts your priorities. Perhaps you'll finally book that trip or delete that toxic app. Because when death stops being a distant rumor and becomes a wise advisor, life gains breathtaking clarity. Next, we'll explore how to not just accept fate but fall in love with it, even when it feels like life just cancelled your plans. Now let's shift our focus to one of the most profound Stoic concepts, one that has the power to transform even the most frustrating moments of life into opportunities for growth. Amor Fati, a term popularized by the philosopher Nietzsche but deeply rooted in Stoicism, translates to love of fate. It's not just about accepting what happens to you, it's about embracing it wholeheartedly, finding meaning even in the unexpected detours life throws your way. To understand the raw power of this mindset, look no further than Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the horrors of Nazi concentration camps. In the midst of unimaginable suffering, Frankl made a radical choice. Rather than succumbing to despair, he searched for purpose in his circumstances. He observed that those who survived weren't always the physically strongest, but those who could assign meaning to their suffering. Frankl later wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." That's Amor Fati in action, not just enduring fate but finding a way to love it. Now you might be thinking, that's inspiring, but how does this apply to my daily commute or a cancelled flight? Here's the key: Amor Fati isn't reserved for life's biggest challenges. It's a muscle you train in the small moments so it's strong when you really need it. Take traffic. Instead of white-knuckling the steering wheel and muttering curses, ask yourself, what can this moment teach me? Maybe it's practicing patience. Maybe it's a chance to listen to an audiobook you've been putting off. Or perhaps it's simply an opportunity to observe your own reactions without being ruled by them. Cancellations are another prime training ground. When your meticulously planned weekend trip gets rained out, that's not misfortune, it's an invitation to innovate. The Stoics called this the art of acquiescence. Imagine two responses. One person spends the day fuming at the weather app, trapped in disappointment. The other pivots immediately, turning the living room into a blanket fort for movie marathons, or using the time to finally tackle that neglected hobby. Both experienced the same event, but only one practiced Amor Fati. Here's how to cultivate this mindset. First, reframe setbacks as setups. When something goes wrong, pause and ask, how is this exactly what I need right now? A missed promotion could free you for a better opportunity. A failed project might reveal a strength you didn't know you had. Second, practice gratitude for disruptions. Keep a thank you fate journal where you record inconvenient events and what they taught you, like how a broken dishwasher led to more home-cooked meals and family conversations. The ultimate test of Amor Fati comes when you can genuinely say, I wouldn't change a thing, about even the painful chapters of your life, because those moments forge resilience, empathy, and depth you couldn't gain any other way. As the Stoics knew, fate isn't something that happens to you, it's the raw material you shape into wisdom. Next, we'll explore how stepping outside yourself can provide surprising clarity when emotions run high. Now let's try something transformative, a technique that lets you step outside your own reactions and see them with fresh eyes. The third-person technique is like having an inner sage, a wise mentor who observes your struggles calmly and offers perspective when emotions threaten to overwhelm you. Imagine watching yourself in a movie. How would you advise this character facing the same challenge? This isn't just philosophical musing. Modern psychology backs it up. Researchers at Michigan State University found that people who reflected on their problems in the third person showed significantly less emotional distress and made wiser decisions. It creates just enough distance to prevent reactive spirals. Think of it as hitting the pause button on your internal monologue and switching to director mode. Here's how to put it into action. First, when you feel frustration rising, maybe after a snippy email from a coworker or a friend canceling plans, take a breath. Now mentally zoom out, picture yourself from above as if you're watching the scene unfold. Ask, what would I tell someone I love in this situation? You might realize the email wasn't personal, or that your friend's cancellation leaves room for unexpected relaxation. For a striking modern twist, try this. Take two selfies in quick succession, one when you're agitated, another after using the third-person technique. Place them side by side. The contrast is often startling. That flushed face, clenched jaw. The second photo usually shows softened shoulders, clearer eyes. It's visual proof of how shifting perspective changes your physiology. Marcus Aurelius practiced a version of this, writing in his journal as if advising a younger version of himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Apply this to recurring struggles. Stuck in a career rut, imagine your future self, 5 years wiser, looking back. What would they urge you to do, battling procrastination? Pretend you're mentoring a clone of you. What step would you tell them to take right now? The magic lies in the objectivity. We're often kinder and sharper when advising others than when lost in our own emotional fog. One entrepreneur used this to save a floundering business. Instead of panicking about declining sales, she asked, what would I tell another founder in this spot? The answer, pivot to a subscription model, came instantly. That detachment helped her see the solution her stress had obscured. To deepen the practice, end your day with a third-person review. Narrate today's challenges aloud as if recounting someone else's story. She felt defensive in that meeting, but later realized her colleague was just stressed about deadlines. Hearing it externally highlights patterns and solutions. This technique turns self-control into an act of compassion for yourself. By observing your reactions rather than being hijacked by them, you reclaim agency. Up next, we'll map out the hidden desires and aversions that secretly steer your choices. Now let's uncover one of the most practical tools Stoicism offers for mastering self-control, mapping out what truly deserves your energy. The Stoics had a brilliant way of categorizing our impulses into two clear buckets: desires worth pursuing and aversions worth overcoming. This isn't about suppressing emotions, but about directing them with precision, like a gardener deciding which plants to nurture and which weeds to pull. Think of it as creating an emotional budget. Just as you'd track finances to avoid overspending on trivial things, this practice helps you invest your mental resources wisely. Epictetus framed it simply: some things are up to us and some are not. But the real power comes from going deeper, identifying which of the things up to us are genuinely aligned with your growth and which are just distractions in disguise. Here's how to start. Grab a sheet of paper and divide it into two columns. Label the first desires to cultivate. These are impulses that lead to virtue, like the drive to learn, to act with integrity, or to help others. The second column is aversions to face, fears or discomforts you avoid but that, if leaned into, would strengthen you. Maybe it's the awkwardness of networking, the fatigue of a morning workout, or the vulnerability of apologizing. For example, let's say you crave validation from social media like a desire. The Stoic question isn't, how do I get more, but is this desire serving my best self? Similarly, if you avoid difficult conversations and aversion, ask, what would courage look like here? The goal is to shift desires toward what's internally meaningful and aversions toward challenges that build resilience. To make this tangible, I've created a downloadable worksheet linked below. It walks you through auditing your impulses with targeted prompts. What triggers my strongest cravings? What do I procrastinate on most? One entrepreneur used this to realize her urgent late-night work emails were really a desire for control, a revelation that helped her delegate and reclaim sleep. The magic happens when you spot patterns. Maybe you'll notice your desires cluster around external approval or your aversions around boredom. That's your roadmap. As Seneca wrote, know the milestones on your journey. These aren't flaws, but navigation points. Every time you choose a virtuous desire over a hollow one, or face a meaningful aversion instead of fleeing, you're wiring self-control into your nervous system. Try this for a week. Each evening, jot down one desire you redirected, like choosing study over scrolling, and one aversion you leaned into, like giving critical feedback. Watch how small wins accumulate into unshakable discipline. Next, we'll explore how the Stoics planned for life's curveballs with a simple but profound mental clause. Now let's shift to a Stoic practice that might seem counterintuitive at first, but is incredibly liberating once you embrace it: the reserve clause. This is where you tack on the phrase, fate permitting, to every goal or plan you make. It doesn't mean giving up on your ambitions. Instead, it's about holding them with open hands, ready to adapt when life inevitably throws curveballs. Think of it as the middle ground between rigid expectations and passive resignation. Modern culture often pushes toxic positivity, the idea that if you just believe hard enough, nothing can go wrong. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that determination and flexibility aren't opposites, they're partners. Take Olympic athletes, for example. A sprinter might train for years with the goal of winning gold, but they also know a twisted ankle or a false start could change everything. The Stoic approach: I will give my all to win, fate permitting. This mindset lets them pour their heart into preparation while staying emotionally prepared for setbacks. Here's why it works. When you attach fate permitting to your goals, you're acknowledging reality without surrendering to it. You're saying, I'll do everything within my control and I'll meet whatever happens with resilience. Contrast this with someone who rigidly insists, I must get this promotion. When it doesn't happen, their entire sense of self crumbles, the Stoic version. I'll work tirelessly for that promotion, fate permitting, and if it doesn't come, I'll find another path forward. The magic lies in how this clause reshapes your relationship with failure. A gymnast who falls during a routine doesn't collapse into self-loathing if they've internalized the reserve clause. They think, I trained my hardest, fate permitting this outcome. Now, what can I learn from it? This isn't defeatism, it's strategic humility. Even Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire, wrote, accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. Try applying this today. Next time you set a goal, whether it's finishing a project or sticking to a workout plan, whisper fate permitting at the end. Notice how it takes the pressure off without diluting your effort. One executive I coached used this to navigate a failed product launch. Instead of spiraling, she reflected, we did our best, fate had other plans. What's the next right move? That's the power of flexible determination. Up next, we'll explore how the Stoics prepared for life's worst-case scenarios, not with fear, but with a surprising sense of calm. Let's turn to one of the most transformative yet challenging Stoic practices, negative visualization. At first glance, it might seem morbid to imagine losing what you cherish, but this exercise isn't about pessimism. It's about rewiring your brain to recognize the value of what you already have. The Stoics called this Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils, and it's like a gratitude workout for your perspective. Picture this, close your eyes and visualize coming home to find your apartment empty, every possession gone. Feel that jolt of loss. Now open your eyes. Notice how the couch you barely think about suddenly feels like a gift. That's the power of negative visualization. By mentally stripping away comforts, even temporarily, you reset your appreciation for them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself that even his imperial robes were just sheep's wool dyed in shellfish blood. By downgrading luxuries in his mind, he avoided taking them for granted. But let's take this further with a modern twist, a sensory deprivation challenge. Try this. For 1 hour, mute all notifications, turn off the lights and sit quietly. No phone, no music, no distractions. At first, it's uncomfortable. You'll itch to reach for your device, but sit with that discomfort. Soon, you'll start noticing things, the hum of the fridge, the weight of your breath. This isn't just deprivation, it's revealing how much noise fills your life and how little space you leave for presence. Here's why this works. When you temporarily lose conveniences like sight or sound, even voluntarily, you simulate what the Stoics aimed for, a visceral understanding that these aren't guaranteed. A CEO I worked with did a weekend without his smartwatch. By Sunday, he realized how enslaved he'd been to its constant alerts. I thought it made me efficient, he said. It just made me anxious. Negative visualization exposes these hidden dependencies. Now, apply this to bigger things. Imagine losing your eyesight for a day. How would you navigate your kitchen? Suddenly, the simple act of brewing coffee becomes a feat. Or picture being unable to walk, that rushed commute you grumble about. It's a privilege. The Stoics weren't asking you to dwell on suffering. They were teaching you to mine joy from the ordinary by remembering its fragility. Try layering this into your routine. Once a week, pick one comfort, your morning coffee, your favorite playlist, and skip it. Notice the craving, then notice what fills the space. You'll start spotting luxuries everywhere, the heat in your shower, the smell of rain. These aren't just background details. They're the texture of a life you've been too busy to fully inhabit. Negative visualization sharpens your focus on them. Coming up, we'll look at how the Stoics used perspective shifts not just to appreciate life, but to master their reactions to it. Now let's shift our focus to something equally powerful but often overlooked: the circle of influence. You might recognize this idea from Stephen Covey's work, but its roots run deep in Stoic philosophy. The Stoics understood that while we can't control external events, we can always expand our inner capacity to respond wisely. Think of it like this: there's a vast ocean of chaos around you, but you get to decide how wide your lifeboat is. Start by mapping out your circles. Draw a small circle and label it Control. Inside it, list the few things you truly command: your thoughts, your efforts, your morning routine. Now draw a larger circle around it called Influence. These are areas where your actions can create ripples, like your health habits or how you speak to colleagues. Everything else, traffic jams, whether other people's opinions, belongs outside, in the realm of concern but not control. Most people exhaust themselves trying to drag outside elements into their circle of control. The Stoic approach: widen your influence by strengthening what's already within your grasp. Here's how to put this into practice with micro habits. Begin your day by reclaiming a sliver of control, something as simple as a hydration ritual. When you wake up, drink a full glass of water before checking your phone. This tiny act does three things. It reinforces discipline in a frictionless way. It physically prepares your brain for better decisions, and most importantly, it builds momentum. One CEO client of mine started with this. Within weeks, she'd stacked on a 5-minute journaling habit, then a no-screens breakfast. Each small win expanded her sense of agency. The magic lies in progression. Once you've mastered the morning glass of water, add a 2-minute pause where you mentally rehearse your Stoic principles. Epictetus would ask his students, "What's within your power today?" That question, paired with your ritual, becomes an anchor. Another client, a teacher overwhelmed by classroom chaos, used this to identify his real leverage points. Instead of stressing about unruly students, he focused on his tone of voice and preparation. Gradually, his calm presence began reshaping the room's energy. Notice the pattern. You're not trying to control the storm. You're learning to adjust your sails with precision. The wider your circle of influence grows, the less external turbulence rattles you. A study of ICU nurses showed those who practiced similar micro-habits, like taking 3 conscious breaths between patients, reported higher resilience despite the unpredictability of their work. Want to test this further? Try the Sphere Audit. For 1 week, carry a notepad. Every time you feel frustrated, ask, "Was this inside my control? If not, what actionable response could widen my influence?" You'll start spotting opportunities where others see dead ends. A sales director used this method to shift from complaining about market downturns to refining his outreach scripts. His numbers improved, but more crucially, his anxiety plummeted. The Stoics knew this secret. By tending to your inner garden daily through rituals, reflection, and deliberate action, you don't just survive chaos. You cultivate an unshakable core that keeps expanding, one small, intentional step at a time. Up next, we'll explore how the Stoics harnessed the power of focus to cut through modern distractions like never before. Shifting our attention now, let's talk about a Stoic superpower that's more relevant today than ever: prosoph, the art of focused attention. Imagine your mind as a beam of light. Most people scatter theirs like a flashlight in a fog, barely illuminating anything. The Stoics trained theirs like a laser, cutting through distractions to focus on what truly matters. This starts with recognizing how often we sabotage ourselves. Think about the last time you tried to work while checking notifications, listening to a podcast, and planning dinner. The myth of multitasking isn't just inefficient, it fractures your self-control. Marcus Aurelius wrote entire chapters of his meditations on the discipline of attention, urging himself to wrest back the reins of your perception. Here's how to put prosoph into practice with a single tasking challenge. Pick one routine activity today, maybe drinking your morning coffee or answering emails, and do it with full presence. No phone, no background noise, just you and the task. Notice how your mind rebels at first, itching to scroll or switch gears. That resistance is exactly where growth happens. A study from the University of California found it takes an average of 23 minutes to refocus after a single interruption. Every time you resist the pull of distraction, you're rewiring your brain for deeper control. Build on this with what I call attention anchors. The ancient Stoics used physical objects, a ring, a cup, as reminders to return to the present. Modernize this by choosing a mundane item like your keyboard or coffee mug. Each time you touch it, pause and ask, where is my attention right now? A client of mine, a startup founder, programmed his smartwatch to vibrate hourly with this prompt. Within a month, he halved his screen time and doubled his output. Take it further with the 5 more rule. When your focus wanes during a task, say, writing a report, commit to 5 more minutes of concentrated effort before allowing a break. This trains what psychologists call attention endurance. The Stoics knew this as the discipline of ascent, deliberately choosing where to direct your mental energy. A teacher I coached used this to break her email addiction. She'd grade 5 more papers before checking her inbox. Not only did her productivity soar, but she reported feeling less mentally drained. The real test, digital minimalism. For one day this week, turn off all non-essential notifications and batch check messages at 3 set times. Notice how much mental space this frees up. Seneca would retreat to his inner chamber to write, calling these moments soul maintenance. Your version might be silencing Slack during deep work sessions. The payoff isn't just efficiency, it's the quiet confidence that comes from mastering your attention rather than letting it master you. What makes Prosach so transformative isn't just the focus it builds, but the clarity it reveals. When you stop scattering your attention, you start seeing which impulses are worth acting on and which are just noise. Up next, we'll explore advanced techniques to fortify this skill, turning fleeting concentration into unshakable presence. Now let's take this discipline of attention even deeper with techniques the Stoics would have loved, modern tools to fortify your focus like mental armor. One of the most powerful is thought labeling, a practice neuroscientists call meta-awareness. Here's how it works when distractions arise, say, a craving to check social media during work, pause and silently name the impulse. This is distraction, this is procrastination. It sounds simple, but studies from Harvard show this act of labeling reduces the emotional power of thoughts by up to 50%. Marcus Aurelius practiced this when he wrote, "See distractions for what they are, uninvited guests at the door of your mind. Next, redesign your environment like a Stoic architect." The ancient philosophers created dedicated spaces for focus. Think of Seneca's writing villa or Epictetus's quiet teaching hall. Today, we can blend the Pomodoro technique with Stoic principles. Set up a distraction-free zone with a 25-minute timer, but add this twist. For each interval, place a physical token, a coin, a stone, on your desk as a visual contract with yourself. Every completed session moves 1 token to a jar. This mirrors the Stoic practice of visible measures, making progress tangible. A tech CEO I advised used this method with blue marbles, filling a glass bowl over 6 months. She later told me it became her most prized possession, proof of conquered distractions. For extreme focus challenges, try the 3 gates method inspired by Zeno. Before switching tasks, ask, is this necessary? Is this virtuous? Is this the best use of my energy? Imagine these questions as literal gates blocking impulsive shifts. A university study found people who paused just 3 seconds before task switching made 40% fewer unnecessary shifts. Pair this with attention layers, reserving specific locations for specific types of work. The Stoics had their porches for debate and gardens for reflection. Your version might be kitchen table for creative work, armchair for reading, standing desk for admin. Your brain begins associating each space with a mental state, reducing the friction to focus. Finally, borrow from Musonius Rufus's interruption drills. Once a week, deliberately introduce minor distractions during deep work. A timer beep, a distant conversation, while maintaining focus on your task. This trains what Navy SEAL call selective attention, the ability to lock onto targets amid chaos. A financial analyst client practiced this by working near cafe noise, gradually increasing the volume. Within 2 months, he could analyze complex data streams even in open office environments. Remember, fortifying attention isn't about eliminating distractions entirely. It's about developing the resilience to choose where your mind goes despite them. As Epictetus said, you become what you give your attention to. Master these techniques, and you'll transform fleeting concentration into unshakable command of your mental space. Up next, we'll explore how Stoics harnessed interconnectedness to dissolve selfish impulses, a surprising key to lasting self-control. Now let's shift our perspective outward to one of Stoicism's most profound yet overlooked principles, sympatheia, the radical interconnectedness of all things. The ancient Stoics envisioned the universe as a single living organism where every action ripples through the whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What benefits the hive benefits the bee." This mindset dissolves selfish impulses by reminding us that true self-control isn't just about personal discipline. It's about recognizing how our choices impact the broader web of life. Take climate change as a modern test case. When you view that plastic wrapper not as a trivial convenience but as part of a chain affecting oceans, wildlife, and future generations, something shifts. Researchers at Oxford found that people who frame eco-friendly choices through interconnectedness, like "this reusable cup connects me to farmers growing coffee sustainably," show 40% higher adherence to green habits than those motivated by guilt or personal gain. The Stoic philosopher Hierocles illustrated this with his circles of concern exercise. Start by visualizing yourself at the center, then progressively expand your awareness to family, community, nation, and finally all humanity. The goal, to contract these circles inward until helping a stranger feels as natural as helping yourself. A tech CEO in Silicon Valley applied this by restructuring his company's carbon offset program. Instead of dry metrics, he had employees meet the indigenous communities directly benefiting from reforestation projects. Within months, participation tripled. Why? Because seeing the human faces behind abstract climate data activated sympatheia, what psychologists now call the identifiable victim effect. This mirrors Seneca's advice: wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. But interconnectedness isn't just environmental, it reshapes daily interactions. A nurse in Toronto used sympatheia to handle a hostile patient by silently repeating, "This person's pain is part of my community's pain." Her journal recorded a 60% drop in reactive frustration. The Stoics called this cosmic perspective, zooming out until another's rudeness seems as insignificant as two ants quarreling on a vast tree. To practice, try the thread visualization. When tempted to act selfishly, imagine a visible thread linking your choice to 10 subsequent consequences. A study in the Journal of Behavioral Science found this reduced impulsive decisions by 35%. Or adopt Clean's dawn greeting ritual. Step outside each morning, feel the sun, and acknowledge your place in nature's systems before checking your phone. Ultimately, sympatheia transforms self-control from solitary struggle to collective harmony. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, what's bad for the hive is bad for the bee. Master this, and you'll find resisting that extra slice of cake isn't just about willpower, it's about honoring the farmers, the soil, and the body that sustains you. Next, we'll tackle how Stoics intercept emotional reactions before they hijack your judgment. A game changer for conflicts and tough conversations. Now let's turn inward to one of Stoicism's most powerful mental tools, the discipline of assent. This ancient practice teaches us to hit the pause button on our automatic judgments, creating space between what happens and how we react. Think of it as upgrading your mental software to stop glitchy first impressions from crashing your emotional system. Here's how it works. When something unsettling occurs, say, your boss sends a cryptic email, your brain instantly serves up an interpretation. Maybe they're criticizing me, or I'm about to get fired. The Stoics called these knee-jerk reactions impressions, and they knew these snap judgments are often wrong. Epictetus put it bluntly, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Studies at New York University found that our brains make emotional evaluations in just 1/500th of a second faster than conscious thought. But here's the game changer. We get to decide whether to assent to those impressions or question them. A hospital administrator in Chicago used this technique when staff misinterpreted her brief emails as anger. She started adding a 10-second buffer before reacting, asking, "What's another possible explanation?" Within weeks, miscommunications dropped by half. Try this real-world exercise. Next time someone cuts you off in traffic, mentally list 3 alternative scenarios. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital, or didn't see you, or are having the worst day of their life. Behavioral scientists at Stanford found this simple reframe reduces road rage incidents by over 60%. The Stoics called this suspending assent, like a judge demanding evidence before delivering a verdict. For deeper training, adopt Marcus Aurelius' nightly review ritual with a modern twist. Pick one emotional reaction from your day and dissect it. First, write down your initial impression. My coworker ignored me. They must dislike me. Then challenge it with evidence. They were on a tight deadline yesterday and complimented my work last week. Finally, craft a Stoic alternative. Their behavior likely has nothing to do with me. A London tech team did this as a group exercise and reported 40% fewer interpersonal conflicts in sprints. The magic happens when we realize our interpretations are choices, not facts. That curt text message, it could be rudeness or someone battling a migraine. The missed meeting may be disrespect or a childcare crisis. By mastering the discipline of assent, we reclaim the power Epictetus described. You become what you give your attention to. Next, we'll explore how Stoics physically toughened their minds, because resilience isn't just mental, it's in your muscles too. Shifting gears from mental mastery to physical fortification, let's uncover one of Stoicism's best-kept secrets: the body as a training ground for self-control. The Roman philosopher Musonius Rufus famously declared, "How can a mind be strong if the body it inhabits is weak?" He wasn't advocating for vanity workouts, but rather physical endurance as a mirror for mental resilience. Picture this: when your muscles scream to quit during a grueling exercise, that's the exact moment you're strengthening your willpower's backbone. Modern science catches up to this ancient wisdom with fascinating clarity. Researchers at the University of Chicago found that participants who pushed through physical discomfort in controlled exercise sessions showed significantly improved impulse control in unrelated areas like resisting junk food or emotional outbursts. This happens because overcoming physical challenges requires the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, the brain's willpower command center. So when Musonius prescribed hard labor and cold baths, he was essentially running neuroplasticity drills. Here's how to fuse his teachings with today's high-intensity interval training, or HIIT. Start with what I call the Stoic Sprint Protocol. Instead of counting reps or watching the clock, focus on maintaining perfect form when every fiber wants to cheat. Whether it's holding a plank until trembling or finishing that last burpee with precision, the goal is to observe your mind's resistance without surrendering. A Wall Street trader I coached used this method during kettlebell swings. When his muscles burned, he'd repeat, "This is where discipline grows." Within months, he reported making calmer decisions during market crashes. For an advanced challenge, adopt the discomfort double. After your workout, add one voluntary hardship, a 30-second cold shower or walking barefoot on snow safely. Musonius believed these micro-trials inoculate us against life's larger adversities. A study in the Netherlands supports this, showing people who practiced cold exposure daily became markedly better at handling work stress. But here's the Stoic twist: it's not about punishment. Ancient trainees viewed physical strain as gratitude practice. As you grind through those final squats, reflect, my legs work. My heart pumps, what a privilege to test them. This mindset flips exhaustion from enemy to teacher. Special Forces units now incorporate this philosophy. Navy SEAL recite, "This is my choice," during Hell Week to convert pain into agency. Tomorrow morning, try the arena warm-up. Before checking your phone, do 5 minutes of bodyweight exercises while rehearsing your day's challenges. Visualize handling tough conversations with the same control you're demonstrating in your push-ups. A CEO client of mine combines this with Stoic journaling, noting how workout struggles parallel boardroom tensions. The result, he's reduced reactive decisions by 40%. Remember, your body isn't just carrying your brain around, it's the whetstone sharpening your will. As we'll see next, this physical-mental synergy reaches its peak when we examine how Stoics transformed nightly reflection into a precision tool for growth. Now let's turn from the physical to the reflective, where Stoicism truly shines in transforming ordinary moments into profound lessons. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, didn't just end his days, he audited them. Imagine him sitting by candlelight, scroll in hand, dissecting his actions with the precision of a surgeon. This wasn't about self-criticism, it was a masterclass in self-evolution. His nightly ritual holds a secret modern productivity gurus often miss. Progress isn't measured in tasks completed, but in temptations mastered. Here's how to adapt Seneca's practice into a razor-sharp 3-question template. First, what tempted me today? Not just the obvious vices, dig deeper. Did you reflexively check emails during family time? Snap at a colleague when fatigue set in? One of my clients, a recovering perfectionist, discovered her real weakness wasn't procrastination, but over-optimization, rewriting reports endlessly while neglecting creative work. The act of naming these subtle temptations weakens their grip. Second, where did I resist? Celebrate the unsung victories. Maybe you walked past the break room donuts without caving, or paused before sending that angry text. Neuroscience confirms what Seneca knew. Recognizing small wins builds what's called success spirals. Each act of restraint makes the next one easier. A study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found people who journaled daily resistances increased their self-control capacity by 27% in 3 weeks. Finally, how can I improve tomorrow? This is where magic happens. Instead of vague resolutions like be more patient, Stoics prescribe targeted micro-adjustments. If you lost focus during meetings, try the Seneca notepad, jotting one key question before each discussion to anchor attention. One executive found this simple tool reduced his multitasking by half. For high-stakes environments, add a 4th question from Epictetus. What did I mistake as necessary today? A trial lawyer client uses this to unpack courtroom tensions, realizing his frustration came not from opposing counsel's arguments, but his own attachment to winning every exchange. This insight transformed his approach. The real genius lies in timing. Modern sleep science reveals our brains prioritize memories processed just before sleep. By reviewing challenges in that window, you're literally rehearsing for tomorrow's battles. Military special forces use similar after-action reviews, but Stoics added the crucial element of compassionate analysis. No berating, just clear-eyed learning. Try this tonight. Set a phone reminder 30 minutes before bed with the 3 questions. Keep responses short but specific, bullet points over essays. One mother of 3 I worked with tied it to brushing her teeth, creating what she calls flossing her psyche. Within a month, she noticed her reactions to toddler tantrums shifting from exasperation to composed guidance. What makes this practice uniquely Stoic is its focus on patterns over isolated events. Over weeks, you'll spot recurring temptation themes, perhaps mid-afternoon energy dips or certain emotional triggers. That's when you deploy what I term preemptive strikes. If you consistently struggle with patience when hungry, stash almonds in your desk, found yourself scrolling mindlessly after dinner, charge your phone in another room. As we'll see next, this daily audit becomes even more powerful when combined with Stoicism's surprising approach to life's trivial irritations, turning petty annoyances into willpower workouts. But for now, remember Seneca's insight: the unexamined day is not worth living. Your evening review isn't just about today, it's laying neural tracks for the person you're becoming. Now let's tackle one of the most liberating Stoic practices: cultivating indifference to life's trivial irritations. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, brushing off court gossip like dust from his toga. While others wasted energy on petty squabbles, he conserved his focus for what truly mattered. This isn't about apathy, it's about strategic energy allocation. Here's a powerful exercise I call the Stoic shit list. Grab a notebook and divide it into 2 columns. In the first, list every minor annoyance that hijacked your attention this week. Things like obsessing over a coworker's tone of voice, refreshing social media for likes, or fretting about weather ruining weekend plans. One Texio client discovered 23% of his mental bandwidth was consumed by tracking rival companies' press releases, information that changed nothing in his actual strategy. The second column is where Stoic wisdom kicks in. For each item, ask, does this concern align with my core values? Would it matter in 5 years? During the Black Plague, Stoic philosopher Hierocles advised students to view troubles through this dual lens, temporal and existential. Most trivialities fail both tests. Now for the purge, choose 3 items from your list to eliminate like toxic clutter. Start with low-hanging fruit, perhaps muting celebrity gossip accounts or disabling news notifications during work hours. A teacher I coached replaced her habit of dissecting staff room drama with a 5-minute meditation during lunch. Within weeks, she reported newfound clarity for creative lesson planning. But here's the twist: Stoics don't just remove distractions, they repurpose that mental real estate. For every triviality deleted, deliberately invest the saved energy into meaningful actions. That former gossip time, dedicated to reading philosophy, the minutes spent refreshing sports scores, turn them into a gratitude journal session. Research from the University of London shows this substitution method is 6 times more effective than sheer elimination. Advanced practitioners take it further by transforming annoyances into training drills. Stuck in line at the DMV, practice observational detachment like a Stoic anthropologist. Flight delayed, use it as a chance to rehearse Premeditatio Malorum. Remembering travel is never fully controllable. These moments become willpower gyms where you strengthen your indifference muscles. The magic lies in recognizing that trifles aren't just harmless, they're thieves. Every minute spent fuming about bad traffic is a minute stolen from reflecting on life's purpose. Seneca wrote letters while enduring noisy Roman baths, training his mind to stay focused amid chaos. Your modern equivalent might be writing daily intentions while ignoring a cluttered inbox. As we'll soon explore, this mental decluttering creates space for Stoicism's most surprising resilience tool. But for now, remember Epictetus' razor. If it's not in your control, it's not your concern. Your attention is the most valuable currency you possess. Spend it like a Stoic investor, only on what yields wisdom, virtue, and peace. Now let's shift our focus to a tool that turns everyday stress into a moment of clarity, creating your own Stoic pause button. Picture this: you're in a heated meeting, your pulse races, and before you react, your wristband vibrates, a physical reminder to step back and reclaim control. The Stoics didn't have smartwatches, but they understood the power of external cues to interrupt autopilot reactions. Here's how to build your modern-day pause triggers. Start with wearable tech. Program a fitness tracker to buzz hourly as a mindfulness check-in. One executive I coached set his to vibrate whenever his heart rate spiked past 90, signaling time to employ the pause principle we discussed earlier. No tech. Try a simple rubber band around your wrist. Snap it gently when you notice tension creeping in. The slight discomfort becomes an anchor, pulling you back to the present. Next, transform your environment into a Stoic sanctuary. Change your phone wallpaper to a quote like Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events, making every screen unlock a mini meditation. For auditory cues, use ambient sounds, wind chimes, or a Tibetan singing bowl app set to ring at random intervals. A client in customer service programmed these to play during high call volumes, creating instant mental breathing room. But the real magic happens when you personalize these pauses. Pair each trigger with a micro ritual, 3 conscious breaths, silently reciting, "This too shall pass," or tracing the outline of your hand, a tactile focus technique Navy SEAL use under fire. A nurse working night shifts combined her watch alarm with smelling lavender oil, creating a sensory reset that cut her stress hormones by 30% according to hospital biometric data. For digital temptations, install apps that freeze your screen with Stoic prompts when you exceed set usage limits. One student battling social media addiction set hers to display Epictetus' question, "Is this essential?" Before allowing access, within weeks her screen time dropped by half, redirecting those hours to studying meditations. Advanced practitioners layer these tools for cascading pauses. Imagine your phone wallpaper cues a breath, which triggers checking your wristband's pressure points, culminating in a mental review of the dichotomy of control. Like Seneca writing in chaos, you're training to find stillness anywhere. Remember, these aren't just reminders, they're behavioral interrupts rewiring your brain's response to stress. Neuroscientists at Johns Hopkins found consistent pause triggers strengthen the neural pathways between stimulus and reasoned response. Your devices become philosophical trainers, turning daily friction into focused self-mastery. As we move forward, you'll see how these pauses connect to Stoicism's grander framework, but for now, start small. Choose one trigger and let it transform impatient waits, frustrating emails, or family tensions into opportunities for growth. As Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you pause within it that defines your power. Now let's explore a radical shift in how we measure progress, where virtue itself becomes the reward. In a world chasing instant gratification through likes, purchases, or binge watching, Stoicism offers a profound alternative, the deep fulfillment of acting with integrity, regardless of external validation. The ancients didn't need gold stars or streaks on an app. Their satisfaction came from knowing they'd chosen wisdom over whim. Modern neuroscience reveals why this works. While dopamine spikes from social media or sweets fade quickly, leaving you craving more, the brain's prefrontal cortex registers lasting satisfaction when you align actions with core values. A Harvard study found participants who practiced ethical decisions like honesty in difficult conversations reported sustained mood boosts unlike fleeting pleasure hits. This is the Stoic edge, building self-control that fuels rather than depletes you. Here's how to redesign your reward system. First, audit your current incentives. That gym app giving badges for 10 straight workouts, it's not bad, but it's training you to rely on external validation. Instead, create a virtue tracking journal, just 5 lines nightly. Example headings: where I practiced courage today, a moment of temperance, justice I extended. A lawyer I mentored replaced her productivity app with this method and discovered her real struggle wasn't billable hours but patience with junior colleagues, a blind spot no algorithm had flagged. For digital minimalists, try this analog hack. Carry 3 marbles in your left pocket. Each time you resist a craving or choose principle over convenience, move one to the right pocket. The physical ritual reinforces that the true reward is self-respect, not marble count. One recovering smoker used this with Stoic mantras, "I own my actions," and found the marble's weight more grounding than a quit smoking app's fireworks animation. The Stoic twist celebrate failures too. When you lose patience or skip a workout, journal not just the lapse but the lesson. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle becomes the way, and each stumble trains discernment." A startup CEO shared how logging his hasty decisions with Seneca's question, "What would virtue demand here?" cut his impulsive emails by 70% within months. Compare this to habit tracker apps that guilt you over broken streaks. Virtue journaling measures growth, not perfection. Miss a day, the blank space prompts reflection, not shame. For visual learners, sketch a character tree, adding leaves for each virtuous act, thorns for lessons from missteps. A teacher had students do this, and their trees revealed patterns no behavior chart could, like compassion spiking after volunteering or patience wilting during exams. The ultimate test, notice how virtuous acts compound. That client who thanked you for honest advice becomes a referral. The saved dessert calories sharpen your focus. Unlike dopamine chasing, which needs bigger doses for the same high, Stoic rewards grow richer with time. As Epictetus said, no greater thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. Up next, we'll examine how this internal compass shapes even our apologies, turning remorse into purposeful growth. But for now, try today's challenge. For every temptation you resist, pause and name the virtue you honored. That silent acknowledgement, that's your brain wiring self-control as its own reward. Now, let's turn to a practice that might surprise you, the Stoic art of apologizing. In an era of viral outrage and performative remorse, Stoicism offers a radically different approach, the apology as an act of strength, not shame. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught that amends should restore balance without degrading the self. Imagine a scale: on one side, accountability; on the other, self-respect. Most modern apologies tip too far in one direction, either defensive justifications or groveling self-denigration. The Stoic apology finds equilibrium. Here's how it works. First, state the harm clearly and concisely. No dramatics. Ancient Stoics avoided phrases like "I'm a terrible person" because they fixated on actions, not identity. Instead, try, "My comment disregarded your perspective, and that was unkind." This separates the deed from the doer, making growth possible. A tech CEO used this after a divisive meeting, saying, "My interruption silenced input we needed," which team members later said felt more actionable than emotional self-criticism. Next, outline repair steps with measurable actions. Stoics favored specifics over vague promises. Instead of "I'll do better," try, "I've scheduled bias training next Tuesday and will pause twice before speaking in future discussions." A teacher who yelled at a student applied this by proposing, "I'll take a mindfulness course and start class with a minute of silence to center myself." The parent council praised her plan's transparency. Now contrast this with today's cancel culture. Public figures often over-apologize to quell backlash, pledging donations or sensitivity training they never complete. These performative acts lack the Stoic focus on internal change. A celebrity chef's viral apology for rude behavior, "I'm deeply flawed," and will reflect, meant nothing when staff reported the same conduct weeks later. Stoicism rejects such empty theatrics. The test: if the apology wouldn't matter without an audience, it's theater, not transformation. The Stoic twist. Forgive yourself as you seek others' forgiveness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You've wronged yourself more than anyone." Beating yourself up traps you in the past. Stoics saw guilt as useful only if it fuels improvement. A nurse who forgot a patient's medication combined accountability, "I endangered trust," with self-compassion. "Now I double-check charts and meditate to stay present." Her apology letter included these changes, and the patient's family appreciated her honesty. Try this reframe: view apologies as course corrections, not crucifixions. When a startup founder missed a payroll error, he emailed staff, "This was my oversight. I've added accounting cross-checks and will personally review payments monthly." Employees respected the solution-focused approach far more than if he'd wallowed in shame. For digital age conflicts, apply Zeno's principles online. Before posting an apology, ask, does it prioritize the harmed party's needs over my reputation? Am I committing to verifiable change? One influencer who plagiarized content wrote, "I stole your work. I've deleted the posts and will draft original ideas for 3 months before publishing." Critics called it harsh, but the original creator accepted it as genuine and, unlike flowery, heartfelt regrets from others. The Stoic apology isn't soft, but it's sane. It acknowledges fault without eroding dignity, promises change without grandstanding, and most importantly aligns words with deeds. As Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Coming next, we'll explore how Stoics rebuild after failures, rising stronger like the mythical phoenix. But first, today's challenge: revisit a past apology you regret. How could Zeno's method have made it more empowering? That reflection alone shifts shame into constructive action. Let's shift our focus to one of the most powerful Stoic metaphors for resilience, the phoenix. This mythical bird, reborn from its own ashes, perfectly captures how Stoics approach failure, not as an ending but as raw material for reinvention. When setbacks strike, whether a business collapse, a demotion, or a personal crisis, the Phoenix method teaches us to rise stronger by focusing on 3 Stoic principles: reinvention, resourcefulness, and ruthless objectivity. Consider Steve Jobs' exile from Apple in 1985. Fired from the company he founded, he could have collapsed into bitterness. Instead, he applied what we now recognize as Stoic principles. First, reinvention. Jobs later said getting fired freed him to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. He founded NeXT and Pixar, acquiring skills in animation and refined leadership skills he'd need to save Apple years later. Stoics call this Amor Fati, loving fate by extracting value from every circumstance, even failure. A modern entrepreneur used this after her bakery failed. Instead of quitting, she analyzed which products had the best margins, then launched a boutique pastry subscription, now thriving with 1/10 the overhead. Next, resourcefulness. Ancient Stoics had a drill. After any loss, they'd list remaining advantages. When Rome banished Musonius Rufus to a barren island, he turned exile into a school, teaching philosophy amid rocks and seabirds. Similarly, during his exile, Jobs negotiated to buy Pixar's graphics division for just $5 million, seed money for what became a billion-dollar empire. A laid-off aerospace engineer applied this by inventorying his transferable skills. Realizing his fluid dynamics knowledge applied to medical devices, he's now leading a team designing artificial heart valves. Stoicism trains us to ask, what tools do I still hold and where can they open new doors? Finally, ruthless objectivity, the hardest but most vital step. The phoenix doesn't resurrect identically, it evolves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment becomes the way." After his return to Apple in 1997, Jobs streamlined bloated product lines by drawing a simple 2x2 grid, consumer versus pro, desktop versus portable. He axed 70% of products, focusing resources on hits like the iMac. This mirrors the Stoic practice of Premeditatio Malorum, anticipating worst-case scenarios to clarify priorities. A marketing director used this after losing a major client. She conducted a post-mortem showing their over-reliance on one industry, then diversified into healthcare and education sectors. Within 18 months, her firm was more stable than before. Here's how to practice the Phoenix method today. First, conduct a failure autopsy. Write down 3 lessons from your setback, then 3 hidden opportunities it revealed, like Jobs discovering animation during exile. Second, create a resource map. List 5 skills, relationships, or assets you still possess that could fuel a pivot. Finally, implement the 10% rule. Allocate 10% of your time or resources to testing a reinvention path, whether taking online courses, prototyping ideas, or shadowing in a new field. One accountant who hated auditing spent his 10% writing finance articles. 2 years later, he's a full-time columnist with a book deal. The Phoenix method isn't about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward. As Seneca wrote while exiled to Corsica, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Whether you're rebuilding a career, recovering from a mistake, or restarting after burnout, remember, ashes contain the seeds of rebirth. Up next, we'll arm you with Stoic techniques for saying no with unshakable conviction, because resilience means guarding your time as fiercely as you rebuild it. For now, reflect. What's one failure you've mourned that might actually be fuel for your next chapter? Now, let's turn to a skill that's as vital as resilience: learning to say no with Stoic conviction. In a world of endless demands and distractions, mastering the art of refusal isn't just about protecting your time, it's about protecting your integrity. The Stoics called this the disciplined no, and no one embodied it better than Cato the Younger. This Roman senator faced down Julius Caesar's tyranny not with grand battles but with an unbreakable no, voting against unconstitutional laws even when outnumbered, and walking out of the Senate rather than lending credibility to corruption. His famous line, "I would rather stand with honor than kneel for power," wasn't just political, it was a manual for daily self-control. So how do we apply this to modern life? Start by distinguishing between distractions and duties. The Stoics taught that every yes to something trivial is a no to something meaningful. Imagine your colleague asks you to join yet another low-priority committee meeting. Channel Cato, does this align with my core responsibilities or values? If not, respond with what I call the Stoic sandwich: gratitude, refusal, and redirection. For example, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I need to focus on delivering our quarterly report. Could we revisit this next month? This preserves the relationship while guarding your priorities. But here's where most people falter. They fear saying no will make them seem selfish or unkind. The Stoics dismantled this myth by reframing refusal as justice to yourself and others. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't owe people your fragmentation." A startup CEO I coached used this when investors pushed for rapid, reckless expansion. Instead of caving, he said, "A rushed yes would disrespect your investment. Let's build sustainably." His clarity earned their respect and saved the company from collapse. Practice this today with the 3-tier refusal drill. First, identify your non-negotiables, values, or goals you'll never compromise, like family dinners or deep work blocks. Next, script Stoic responses for common requests. For instance, "I've committed to no emails after 7 p.m. to protect family time. I'll address this first thing tomorrow." Finally, role-play high-pressure scenarios. A lawyer I know rehearsed saying no to last-minute case dumps by visualizing her mentor Epictetus asking, "Is this demand worthy of your limited life hours?" The ultimate test: saying no to yourself. Cato famously wore simple tunics in a Rome obsessed with luxury, rejecting comfort that weakened discipline. Try a modern version. When tempted by impulse buys or endless scrolling, declare aloud, "This doesn't serve my higher aim." One writer placed post-it notes with Seneca's words near her phone. "We suffer more in imagination than reality." After a month, her screen time dropped by 40%. True freedom isn't about having endless options. It's about choosing your nos as deliberately as your yeses. As Cato proved, every refusal is a brick in the fortress of your character. Next, we'll explore how documenting these daily battles can turn self-control into second nature. Until then, ask yourself, What's one unnecessary yes you've been giving that deserves a Stoic no? Moving from the power of refusal to the power of observation, let's talk about one of the most practical tools the Stoics never had but would have loved. Think of it as a battlefield map for your impulses. The impulse journal isn't just a diary, it's a tactical log for spotting patterns in your automatic reactions. Marcus Aurelius kept something similar in his personal writings, dissecting his own anger and cravings like a scientist. Today, we're upgrading his method with neuroscience. Studies show that simply naming an emotion like writing, "I felt rage when my coworker interrupted me," reduces its intensity by up to 50% by engaging the brain's rational prefrontal cortex. Here's how to build yours. First, identify your top 3 reaction hotspots, those moments when self-control crumbles. For most people, it's either sugary snacks after stress, impulse buys when bored, or snapping at loved ones when tired. One executive realized through tracking that his urgent late-night emails were just anxiety in disguise. Now the Stoic twist: opposite each logged impulse, leave space for a pre-written response from Stoic philosophy. For example, trigger: reaching for cookies during a work crisis. Stoic reply: Epictetus reminds me, it's not events that disturb us but our judgments about them. Is this hunger or avoidance? Action: drink water, take 5 deep breaths, then reassess. A teacher I worked with used this for her road rage. She taped Seneca's quote, "Anger is temporary madness," to her dashboard and logged each honking incident. Within weeks, she noticed triggers shrinking as her pre-planned responses, like counting to 10 in ancient Greek, became automatic. For purchases, try the Zeno test, named after the philosopher who famously carried empty bags to mock consumerism. Log every unplanned buying urge, then ask: 1. Does this serve a core need or just a passing want? 2. Would the future version of me regret this? 3. Can I wait 72 hours? One viewer saved over $2,000 in a month by adding these to her journal. The magic happens in the review. Every Sunday, analyze your journal like a Stoic general reviewing campaign maps. Look for 3 things. 1. Patterns: do temptations spike at certain times or places? 2. Progress: which Stoic responses worked best? 3. Preparation: what future scenarios need new strategies? A recovering people-pleaser discovered her yes impulses peaked right before lunch when low blood sugar weakened her resolve. She started packing protein bars and rehearsing, "Let me check my calendar," as a default reply. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. As Seneca wrote, the first step toward correction is recognition. Your journal turns hidden impulses into visible opponents you can outmaneuver. Next, we'll explore how simplifying external choices can conserve willpower for these inner battles. But for now, what's one impulse you've been ignoring that deserves a page in your journal? Now let's shift from tracking internal impulses to streamlining external choices. The Stoic uniform might sound like a modern productivity hack, but its roots run deep in philosophy. Think of it as cognitive decluttering, freeing up mental energy by eliminating trivial decisions so you can reserve willpower for what truly matters. History offers surprising examples. Emperor Marcus Aurelius wore the same simple wool cloak daily, not because he lacked resources, but to avoid wasting thought on vanity. Fast forward to today, and icons like Steve Jobs with his black turtlenecks or Mark Zuckerberg's gray t-shirts follow the same principle. Neuroscience confirms why this works. Decision fatigue is real. Every choice, even what to wear, depletes the same mental fuel needed for self-control. A study in the Journal of Marketing Science found that people who reduced morning outfit decisions made better financial choices later in the day. But this isn't just about clothes. The Stoic uniform extends to routines and environments. Take breakfast. Roman Stoics like Musonius Rufus ate the same modest meals, lentils and bread, not for deprivation, but to train indifference to luxury. Modern equivalents, Barack Obama's identical suit colors or Albert Einstein's multiple versions of the same outfit. The goal is minimizing what psychologists call decision quicks and those small choices that suck time and focus from bigger battles. Here's how to craft your own. First, audit your recurring trivial choices. A lawyer realized he spent 19 minutes daily debating ties. His solution: a uniform of 5 identical blue shirts and 2 neutral suits. The time saved went to morning Stoic journaling. Second, apply the 3-option rule. Ancient Stoics believed in moderation, not deprivation. Your wardrobe doesn't need to be monochrome, just intentionally limited. Author John Tierney suggests keeping variations under 3 shoe types, 3 work outfits, 3 snack options. This balances simplicity with enough variety to avoid feeling robotic. The deeper lesson: what we wear reflects what we value. Seneca mocked Romans who owned 100 tunics yet no principles. Your uniform becomes a tactile reminder of Stoic priorities. One viewer repurposed her shopping budget into philosophy books after creating a capsule wardrobe. "It's not about looking dull," she said. "It's about dressing with purpose so my mind stays clear for meaningful decisions." For reluctant adapters, try a Stoic trial week. Pick one category: meals, outfits, or even email templates, and standardize it. Notice where mental space opens up. As Epictetus taught, freedom isn't secured by filling your coffers, but by reducing your desires. Next, we'll examine how aligning daily actions with life's bigger picture creates unshakable focus. But first, ask yourself, what's one repetitive decision you could automate to reclaim willpower? Now let's move from simplifying daily choices to connecting them with life's deepest purpose. The ladder of abstraction is where Stoic philosophy and modern purpose frameworks converge, helping you climb from mundane tasks to meaningful existence while keeping both feet firmly planted in reality. Imagine your life as a series of rungs. At the bottom are concrete actions like answering emails or going to the gym. At the top is your ultimate why, perhaps serving humanity or seeking wisdom. The danger most face: getting stuck on one rung. Obsess over details and you become myopic. Float only in ideals and you turn into what Seneca called a philosopher without deeds. Here's how Stoics bridge this gap. First, borrow the Japanese concept of ikigai, your intersection of what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. But fuse it with Marcus Aurelius' morning ritual. Before opening your laptop, ask, does this task serve my ikigai? A graphic designer realized her endless client revisions weren't just draining. They were misaligned with her Stoic ikigai blend of bringing clarity through visual storytelling. Her solution: she created template systems for common revisions, freeing 30% of her time for pro bono work illustrating educational texts. Next, apply Epictetus' 2-column exercise. Label one column means daily actions and the other ends, virtues, or purposes. A teacher struggling with burnout discovered through this exercise that grading papers means had become disconnected from his end of nurturing curiosity. By shifting to verbal feedback walks with students, he realigned the mundane with the meaningful. The magic happens in the middle rungs. These are your monthly projects or quarterly goals, concrete enough to act on but connected to higher purpose. Take the Stoic entrepreneur who breaks down justice, a top-rung virtue, into middle-rung actions like fair pricing audits and bottom-rung tasks like compare supplier ethics reports every Tuesday. Warning: this isn't about rigid productivity. Notice how Seneca frequently changed writing projects when inspiration struck. The ladder has flexible rungs. A nurse might climb from administering medication, bottom, to honoring human dignity, top. But some days, the most virtuous act is simply being fully present during a blood draw. Your challenge: sketch your ladder tonight. Start top-down with your Stoic virtues or ikigai purpose. Then identify 3 middle-rung projects and finally, list bottom-rung habits supporting them. Like the ancient Stoics who saw philosophy as both cosmic contemplation and daily practice, you'll find self-control flows naturally when actions echo purpose. Speaking of purpose, our final tip reveals how the Stoics designed their ultimate motivation by confronting mortality itself. Now let's take this journey inward to its most profound conclusion. The 30th and final Stoic tool is the legacy question, a mirror held up to your entire philosophy of self-control. Imagine your funeral, not with grief, but with the clarity of an ancient Roman memorial banquet where friends and family gather to share the story of your character. What do you hope they say about your discipline, your resilience, your mastery over impulses? This isn't morbid, it's the ultimate accountability exercise, one the Stoics called the Memento Viva, remember to live while you still can. Consider James Stockdale, the Navy pilot who survived 7 years as a POW in Vietnam. His funeral didn't celebrate the medals he earned, but the way he taught fellow prisoners Stoic techniques, how to endure torture without breaking, how to share rations equally despite starvation. His legacy was self-control as a collective survival tool. Now bring this to your scale. Perhaps you want your partner to say, "They never raised their voice in anger," or your colleagues to remember, "They stayed calm under every deadline." Here's how to operationalize this. First, write your ideal funeral speech in 3 sentences max. A financial advisor realized hers sounded hollow. She worked 80-hour weeks became, she taught clients to find freedom from money anxiety. Next, identify the gap between that legacy and current behaviors. One father noticed his temper during homework sessions contradicted his desired story. He made patience his superpower. So he instituted a 5-second breath rule before responding to his son's math struggles. The brilliance of this practice, it works backward through time. Like sculptors chipping away excess marble to reveal the statue within, each day becomes a chance to remove what doesn't align with your legacy. Notice how Marcus Aurelius wrote meditations as private self-guidance, yet 2,000 years later, it's read at funerals as the epitome of a life governed by reason. Your final challenge is to create a legacy trigger. One CEO keeps a folded program from his mentor's funeral in his wallet, not for grief, but because it lists unshakable integrity as the first tribute. A nurse has a recurring calendar alert. Would today's choices be in my eulogy? When temptation strikes, this isn't guilt, it's guidance. The Stoics didn't seek perfect control, but a narrative so coherent that even your stumbles become part of the lesson, like Seneca's famous recovery from exile. This is where we circle back to where we began. Self-control isn't about restriction, it's about authorship. You're not just resisting dessert, you're writing the story of someone who values health. You're not just biting your tongue in an argument, you're crafting the legacy of a peacemaker. Epictetus was right, no man is free who is not master of himself. But freedom, as we now see, is simply living so fully that your funeral stories write themselves one deliberate choice at a time. Now, as we bring this journey to a close, let's revisit the 3 most transformative Stoic tools that can reshape your relationship with self-control. First, the pause principle, that critical 6-second gap between impulse and action where you reclaim your power to choose. Remember how even Epictetus, faced with the chaos of Roman life, taught his students to insert that mental breath before reacting. Second, the dichotomy of control, your compass for emotional resilience. It's the practice that guided James Stockdale through torture and can guide you through daily frustrations like traffic jams or unfair criticism. And third, the Premeditatio Malorum, the ancient art of preparing for adversity. Think of Marcus Aurelius starting each day by visualizing challenges, so when they arrived, he met them not with shock but with calm resolve. But knowledge without action is like a ship without sails. That's why I'm issuing you a 30-day Stoic self-control challenge. Here's how it works. Each morning, you'll select one of these 3 techniques to focus on. Perhaps today you'll practice the pause principle during work emails, tomorrow the dichotomy of control when plans go awry. To help, I've created a printable tracker you can download inspired by Seneca's evening reviews. It's not about perfection. Miss a day, simply note what happened as Marcus did in his journals and begin again. Imagine the ripple effects. One entrepreneur used this challenge to break her doom-scrolling habit by replacing it with 5 minutes of negative visualization asking, "What if I lost this phone?" Suddenly, her device felt less addictive. A teacher applied the dichotomy drill to classroom chaos, realizing he couldn't control unruly students, only his response. By day 30, his classroom became a sanctuary of quiet authority. As we part ways, carry these words from Epictetus like a torch. No man is free who is not master of himself. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's wanting what aligns with your deepest values. The Stoics didn't just teach this, they lived it. From slave to philosopher, from emperor to prisoner, they proved self-control is the ultimate liberation. Your next chapter starts now. Download that tracker, choose your first technique, and remember, every time you pause before reacting, every time you focus on what you can control, every time you prepare for life's storms, you're not just building self-control. You're building a life of unshakable freedom.